The perpetual dusk of Veritas cast long shadows across Frontier Delta 9. The settlement's prefabricated structures huddled against the planet's unforgiving terrain, like scattered children's blocks. 8 light-years from Earth. This outpost existed in a constant state of defiance against a world that seemed determined to reject human presence. The violet-tinged atmosphere crackled with electromagnetic disturbance, the prelude to yet another ion storm. Ethan Cole stood on the porch of his modest dwelling, eyes fixed on the churning clouds above. At 37, his face carried the weathered lines of a man who had survived more than just harsh elements. A tall, lean figure with prematurely graying temples. He unconsciously flexed his calloused hands, hands that had dismantled and rebuilt more spacecraft engines than he cared to count. "Dad, the emergency alert just pinged. Category 3 ion storm approaching from the western quadrant." Ethan turned to see his daughter, Ellie, standing in the doorway. At 10 years old, she possessed an understanding of meteorological patterns that would impress even the colony's chief science officer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her bright eyes, so like her mother's, held that familiar mixture of concern and excitement that storm warnings always brought. "Already on it, Starfinder," he replied, using the nickname that had stuck since she was 5. "Better secure the workshop. Those new stabilizer components won't survive a power surge." Ellie nodded, already moving with practiced efficiency. "I'll run the shield diagnostics and make sure the backup generator's primed." As she disappeared into the house, Ethan felt the familiar pang in his chest. 5 years since Sarah had been taken from them in what the company representatives had called a regrettable accident during a routine subspace field test. 5 years of raising Ellie alone on this frontier world, holding tight to the only piece of his heart that remained. The settlement's warning siren began its low, undulating wail. Soon, the 48 families of Delta 9 would be battened down in their reinforced dwellings, riding out another of Veritas's temperamental displays. The planet had resources worth harvesting, mineral deposits and rare elements that Earth's industries craved, but it made the colonists work for every ounce. Inside, Ellie was already at the control panel, her small fingers moving with practiced precision across the interface. Shield integrity at 97%. That'll hold unless it upgrades to a Category 4. Ethan nodded, moving to help her. "Good work. Let's make sure." A brilliant flash illuminated the room, followed seconds later by a concussive boom that rattled the structure's foundation. Not thunder. Something had entered the atmosphere at high velocity. "That wasn't lightning," Ellie said, already pulling up the external cameras on her tablet. "Look." The screen showed a streak of fire cutting across the darkening sky, a vessel in uncontrolled descent, trailing particles of superheated plasma as it plummeted toward the abandoned mining sector 3 kilometers east of the settlement. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Colony protocol was clear. Unknown vessels were to be reported immediately to security. But security meant Commander Vance, and Vance meant questions Ethan had spent 5 years avoiding. "Dad, someone could be hurt," Ellie said, reading his hesitation. Mom would have gone to help. The mention of Sarah hit him like a physical blow. She would have gone, without hesitation. "Stay here," he said, grabbing his emergency pack from beside the door. "Seal the house after I leave. No arguments, Ellie." "But no arguments." His voice softened at the worry in her eyes. "I'll calm you every 15 minutes. If I miss even one check-in, you alert Tess next door. Not security. Not Vance. Tess. Understood?" She nodded reluctantly. 15 minutes. Be careful, Dad." The storm was intensifying as Ethan guided his terrain vehicle through the rocky wasteland. The old mining sector loomed ahead, abandoned processing structures like skeletal fingers against the violet sky. His comm unit crackled with static, ion interference already disrupting communications. Following the trajectory he'd calculated, Ethan navigated through the maze of derelict equipment and half-collapsed tunnels. The crash site wasn't difficult to locate. A deep furrow had been gouged into the rocky ground, ending at a structure unlike any spacecraft Ethan had ever seen. It resembled a massive teardrop, roughly 20 meters long, its surface not reflecting light, so much as seeming to absorb it. No visible seams, no external engines, no conventional entry points. As Ethan approached cautiously, portions of the hull appeared to shift and ripple, as if the material itself were somehow alive. "What the hell?" he muttered, pulling out his scanner. The readings made no sense. Energy signatures that fluctuated wildly. Materials that the device couldn't identify. This wasn't human technology, nor any of the few non-terrestrial designs he'd studied during his years at the Academy. A section of the hull suddenly liquefied, forming an opening barely large enough for a person to exit. Ethan ducked behind a rusted ore processor, weapon drawn, as a figure stumbled out onto the rocky ground. The being was humanoid, clad in what appeared to be form-fitting armor that shimmered with iridescent patterns resembling circuitry. The helmet obscured any facial features, but the proportions suggested a female form. As the figure took 3 unsteady steps, Ethan saw dark fluid seeping between the armor plates, blood, or something like it. The armored figure collapsed, one hand reaching out as if grasping for something unseen. Without thinking, Ethan moved forward, medical kit already in hand. As he approached, the helmet retracted, seeming to melt into the collar of the armor, revealing a face that stole his breath. She was unquestionably not human, yet strikingly beautiful. Her skin had a faint blue luminescence, marked with symmetrical patterns that might have been natural or artificial. Ethan couldn't tell. Her features were sharp, elegant, with eyes that seemed to shift color like oil on water. Blood, a deep indigo, trickled from a gash along her temple. Those remarkable eyes focused on him, widening with what might have been fear or surprise. She spoke, her voice melodic but weak, in a language his translator couldn't process. When she saw his confusion, she seemed to concentrate, and then, remarkably, spoke in halting English. "Hide me. They follow. If they find, I'll die." Then her eyes rolled back, and she lost consciousness just as the storm broke overhead in full fury. Ethan's decision was made in seconds. Colony protocol be damned. He couldn't leave her to die, and he couldn't turn her over to Vance and his security team. Not with her warning ringing in his ears. Not when something in his gut told him this wasn't just a damaged ship, but a vessel being pursued. With considerable effort, he managed to get her into his vehicle. The armor she wore was surprisingly light, seeming to adjust itself to facilitate movement. As the first massive raindrops began to fall, sizzling where they hit the mysterious ship, Ethan covered the unconscious figure with a tarp and began the treacherous drive back to the settlement. His comm unit buzzed. Ellie's worried voice came through the static. "Dad, it's been 17 minutes. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Starfinder," he replied, glancing at his unconscious passenger. "Had to take shelter from the storm. I'm on my way back now." "Did you find the crash site? Was it a ship? Was anyone hurt?" Ethan hesitated only briefly. "Yes to all 3. Listen, Ellie, I'm bringing someone back. Someone injured. I need you to prepare the old storage unit. Clean sheets on the cot. Medical kit ready." A pause. "Not the infirmary." "No, this needs to stay between us for now." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, what's going on?" Ethan looked again at the alien woman, her breathing shallow but steady. "I'm not entirely sure, but I need you to trust me." "Always," came the immediate reply, and Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for his remarkable daughter. By the time he reached their home, the storm was at its peak. The settlement had gone into lockdown, most residents securely inside their dwellings, using the chaos of the weather as cover. Ethan managed to transport his unconscious passenger to the storage unit behind their house, a space he'd converted into a workshop for projects he didn't want officially logged. Ellie was waiting, her eyes growing wide as saucers when she saw who her father had brought home. "Dad," she whispered, she's not." "Human," Ethan finished for her. "No, she's not." The alien woman lay on the cot, her armor now seeming to have partially retracted, revealing more of the fitted bodysuit beneath. The blood had stopped flowing, but the wound on her temple still looked serious. "Is she going to die?" Ellie asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "Not if I can help it." He began unpacking the medical kit, grateful for Sarah's insistence that he learn emergency medicine during their academy days. "I need you to monitor her vitals while I clean this wound. Can you handle that?" Ellie nodded, her initial shock giving way to determination. "What's her name?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "She spoke to me, but only a few words. Warned me that they were following her." "Who's they?" "That," Ethan said grimly, "is what I intend to find out when she wakes up." For 3 days, the alien woman remained unconscious, her condition stable but unchanging. Ethan divided his time between his regular duties at the settlement's repair bay and keeping watch over their secret guest. Ellie, showing remarkable composure for her age, helped monitor the patient during the hours Ethan had to be absent. On the 4th morning, Ethan entered the storage unit to find Ellie sitting beside the cot, reading aloud from her favorite book about stellar navigation. She looked up as he entered. "Dad, her armor keeps doing things. Watch." She gently placed her hand near, but not touching, the alien's forearm. The armor rippled in response, the circuitry-like patterns briefly glowing brighter. "It's been happening more in the last hour," Ellie continued. "I think she might be waking up." As if on cue, the alien's eyes fluttered open, those remarkable, color-shifting eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. She blinked several times, then focused first on Ellie, then on Ethan. Her expression registered confusion, then recognition. "You," she said, her voice stronger now but still accented in ways Ethan couldn't place. "You helped me." Ethan nodded. "You were injured. Your ship crashed during the ion storm." She attempted to sit up, wincing with the effort. Ethan moved to assist her, but before he could reach her, the armor at her back shifted, forming a support that helped her rise to a sitting position. "Heart flame," she said urgently. "My vessel, is it secure?" "If you mean your ship, it's where you left it," Ethan replied. "The storm covered most traces of the crash. I don't think anyone else has found it yet." Relief visibly washed over her features. "Good. That gives us time." She looked around the simple room, taking in her surroundings. "You have hidden me in your dwelling, at great risk to yourself and—" Her gaze settled on Ellie. "Your offspring." "My daughter," Ethan corrected. "Ellie." The alien woman inclined her head slightly toward the girl. "I am in your debt, young Ellie." She then turned back to Ethan. "And to you, I owe my life." "You can start repaying that debt with some answers," Ethan said, crossing his arms. "Who are you? What are you doing in this system? And who's following you?" The woman seemed to consider her words carefully. "I am Valeth. My full designation is Empress Valeth Saravari, Sovereign of the Seventh Accord." She paused, noting their blank expressions. "My people are unknown to yours. We have observed but not contacted Earth or its colonies." "You're an Empress?" Ellie asked, eyes wide with wonder. A shadow crossed Valeth's face. "I was... until the usurpation." She straightened, dignity evident despite her circumstances. "As for why I am here, I did not intend to be. My flight path was meant to bypass your system entirely. But my vessel was damaged in an ambush. The navigation system failed, and your planet's gravity well captured me. And who's chasing you? Ethan pressed. Those who overthrew me. They call themselves the Alpha Domina Consensus, an artificial intelligence network that infiltrated my empire's systems and turned many of my people against me. Her voice hardened. They will not stop until I am eliminated. My presence here endangers you both, and your entire settlement. Ethan exchanged a glance with Ellie. Why would an AI from another star system care about a small human colony? Valeth's expression became grave. Because Alpha Domina serves the Shepherd factions, and the Shepherds have been monitoring your species for generations. The term sent an electric jolt through Ethan. Sarah had mentioned Shepherds in her research notes, notes he'd found after her death, notes that made little sense at the time. What are Shepherds? Ellie asked. Valeth's gaze never left Ethan's face. They are a consortium of ancient civilizations that monitor and manage the development of younger species. They prevent technological advancements they deem destabilizing to galactic order. Manage how? Ethan asked, though a cold certainty was already forming in his gut. Through controlled interventions, Valeth said quietly. Often disguised as accidents or natural disasters, they eliminate individuals who make breakthrough discoveries before their species is deemed ready. The room seemed to tilt beneath Ethan's feet. My wife, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. Sarah was working on experimental quantum navigation. They said there was a containment failure, a lab accident. Valeth's expression softened with understanding. I am sorry. The pattern is consistent with their methods. Ellie looked between them, her young face processing this new, terrible possibility. You mean Mom was... She couldn't finish the sentence. Before either adult could respond, an alert chimed from the small console Ethan had set up to monitor settlement communications. He moved quickly to check it. Security alert, he reported grimly. Unscheduled shuttle landing at the main port. 4 corporate auditors requesting access to colony records. They've found me, Valeth said, attempting to stand. Her armor shifted again, providing support. I must leave immediately, if they discover I've had contact with you. You're not going anywhere yet, Ethan interrupted. You can barely stand, and we need to know what we're dealing with. Valeth fixed him with those otherworldly eyes. What you are dealing with is beyond your experience, Ethan Cole. These are not mere humans. They are synthetic agents, biological constructs controlled directly by Alpha Domina. They will appear human, but possess capabilities far beyond your security forces. Then we need a plan, Ethan said firmly. Ellie, get the portable scanner and run a sweep for any unusual signals or energy signatures around the settlement. As Ellie hurried to comply, Ethan turned back to Valeth. Your ship, the Heartflame, could it be repaired? A flicker of hope crossed her face. Possibly. The damage was severe, but not catastrophic. The self-repair systems are functioning, but slowly, with external assistance. Perhaps. I'm a ship engineer, Ethan said. If I can help repair your vessel, could you contact your allies, get off-world? If Heartflame were fully operational, yes. I have loyal forces in the Aurealis Drift who would come to my aid. She studied him intently. But why would you help me further? I have brought danger to your door. Ethan's jaw tightened. Because if what you're saying about the Shepherds is true, then they've already taken something from me, and I want answers. The next morning brought clear skies and a subtle change in the settlement's atmosphere. The corporate auditors had established themselves in the administration building, requesting individual interviews with key personnel. Their stated purpose was a standard efficiency evaluation, but Ethan noticed the increased security patrols and the new surveillance drones hovering at strategic points throughout Delta 9. They're methodical, Valeth observed from the small view screen Ethan had set up in the storage unit. She had regained much of her strength, though she still moved with careful precision. They will establish a perimeter, then work inward, monitoring communications and energy signatures. Ethan nodded grimly. Your armor and ship both emit unusual energy patterns. We need to mask them somehow. My exomembrane can adapt its emissions to mimic surrounding technology, Valeth said. But Heartflame's signature is more difficult to conceal. Its quantum core pulses on frequencies your instruments cannot even detect. Ellie, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly looked up from the tablet she'd been studying. What if we don't try to hide it? What if we make it look like something else instead? Both adults turned to her. The abandoned mining equipment, she continued excitedly. It gives off all kinds of weird readings because of mineral contamination. If we could move your ship into one of the old processing plants. Disguise it as derelict machinery, Ethan finished, a smile spreading across his face. Ellie, you're brilliant. It could work, Valeth admitted. But moving Heartflame would be challenging. In its damaged state, activating the propulsion system might trigger detectable emissions. We don't need to fly it, Ethan said. I have access to heavy transport equipment. With the right modifications, we could move it conventionally. Before they could discuss further, Ethan's comm unit chimed. He checked the ID and felt his stomach tighten. It's Vance. I have to take this. The conversation was brief, but concerning. As the settlement's chief repair engineer, Ethan was requested to present himself for an interview with the auditors the following morning. They're working through the technical staff first, he reported after ending the call. Looking for anyone who might have detected the crash or unusual readings during the storm. Will your systems have recorded anything? Valeth asked. Maybe. I disabled my vehicle's tracking when I went to investigate, but the settlement's perimeter sensors might have picked up something. He ran a hand through his hair, thinking, I need to access the main database before my interview. Scrub anything suspicious. That's risky, Valeth warned. They will be monitoring access to critical systems. I don't have a choice. If they find evidence I was near the crash site, they'll focus on me immediately. He checked the time. The night shift has minimal staffing. I can get in through maintenance access. Ellie stepped forward. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not, Ethan said firmly. Dad, I'm the best at data systems in my entire class. You know that. And I can fit into spaces you can't if you need physical access to secure sections. Ethan was about to refuse again when Valeth spoke. She is right, Ethan. A child would draw less suspicion than an adult in restricted areas, and her skills may prove valuable. He looked between them, conflicted. The thought of putting Ellie in danger made his chest constrict, but the pragmatic part of him recognized the logic of their argument. Fine, he conceded reluctantly. But you stay with me at all times, and if I say run, you run. No questions, no arguments. Ellie nodded solemnly. Promise. Valeth watched them prepare with something like admiration in her otherworldly eyes. You humans are remarkable, she said softly. Faced with forces beyond your understanding, yet you adapt and fight. That's what we do, Ethan replied, checking his toolkit one last time. We survive. The administration building was quiet at night, with only security personnel and a skeleton crew of technicians on duty. Ethan's status gave him legitimate access to the maintenance sections, though his arrival at such a late hour earned him a curious look from the guard at the entrance. Coolant leak in server room 3, he explained, displaying the work order he'd forged. Systems flagged it as urgent. The guard nodded, waving them through. Take the kid with you to a repair job. Ethan shrugged. Babysitter canceled. Besides, she's learning the trade. Once inside the maintenance corridors, Ethan and Ellie moved quickly toward the central server room. Using his security override, they gained access to the dimly lit chamber, filled with humming equipment. "We have 10 minutes before the security sweep," Ethan whispered. "Find the perimeter sensor logs for the night of the storm, and wipe any anomalous readings." Ellie nodded, slipping into the chair at the main console. Her fingers flew across the interface with practiced ease. "Found them," she reported after a moment. "There's definitely something here. An atmospheric entry event recorded at 2047, followed by impact tremors at 2053. Can you delete just those entries?" She shook her head. "Not without leaving traces of the edit. But," her brow furrowed in concentration, "I can corrupt the entire 4-hour block. Make it look like the storm caused data degradation. Do it." As Ellie worked, Ethan kept watch at the door. The corridor remained empty, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. "Done," Ellie announced after several tense minutes. "I've also created a system flag recommending recalibration of the Eastern Quadrant sensors due to storm damage." "Good thinking," Ethan said. "Now, let's check if there's any record of—" He stopped abruptly as footsteps sounded in the corridor. Motioning for Ellie to stay quiet, he moved to the maintenance panel he'd ostensibly come to repair and quickly removed the cover. The door slid open, revealing a tall, slender man in a corporate uniform Ethan didn't recognize. His features were too perfect, his movements too precise. "Engineer Cole," the man said, his voice pleasantly modulated, yet somehow empty of genuine emotion. "Working late, I see." Ethan straightened, feigning surprise. "Yes, sir. Coolant leak. Critical system." The man's eyes, a gray so pale they appeared almost silver, flicked to Ellie, then back to Ethan. "And the child?" "My daughter. Babysitter situation. She's not touching anything, just observing." The corporate representative smiled, the expression not quite reaching those silver eyes. "Admirable, involving her in your work. Education is vital." He took a step closer, glancing at the open maintenance panel. "Curious. Our systems didn't register a coolant pressure drop." Ethan's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. "Microfracture. Sometimes they don't trigger the main alarms until they worsen." "Indeed." The man clasped his hands behind his back. "You've been with this settlement for 5 years, correct? Since the unfortunate accident involving your wife?" The casual mention of Sarah sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "That's right." "Dr. Sarah Cole. Brilliant physicist. Such a tragedy." The man's head tilted slightly. Her work on quantum navigation was quite advanced for its time. Ethan felt Ellie tense beside him. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "If you'll excuse us, I need to finish this repair before the morning shift." "Of course." The man stepped aside, but his pale gaze remained fixed on them. "We should speak further. Engineer Cole, perhaps during your scheduled interview tomorrow. I'm particularly interested in your activities during the recent ion storm." After the man departed, Ethan and Ellie exchanged worried glances. "Dad," Ellie whispered, "he's one of them, isn't he? The synthetic agents Valeth mentioned." Ethan nodded grimly. "Yes, and he knows something about your mother's work." He quickly replaced the maintenance panel. "Let's get out of here. We need to warn Valeth." They had almost reached the exit when alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow. "Security breach in Sector 7, announced the automated system. "All personnel remain at stations. Security teams report to Sector 7. That's the old mining area, Ellie realized, near where Heartflame crashed. "They've found the ship," Ethan said, quickening his pace. "We need to move now." They managed to leave the administration building amid the confusion, but Ethan noticed several drones changing course to follow their vehicle as they drove home. He took a deliberately circuitous route, eventually losing their mechanical shadows in the residential district. When they reached their dwelling, they found Valeth already in motion, her armor fully deployed and a small device in her hand projecting holographic schematics. "They've located Heartflame," she said without preamble. The quantum core is still emitting trace pulses as part of the self-repair sequence. We know, Ethan replied. The whole settlement's on alert, and we had an encounter with one of your synthetic agents. He mentioned Sarah's work specifically. Valeth's expression darkened. Then our timeline has accelerated. We must reach Heartflame before they secure it. How? The entire area will be crawling with security. I have this. Valeth held up a small crystalline object. A remote interface for Heartflame's systems. If I can get within 2 kilometers, I can initiate emergency protocols that will mask its signature temporarily. Ethan considered their options. We can use the maintenance tunnels that run beneath the old mining sector. They're not on current maps. The company abandoned them years ago when that section was decommissioned. I know those tunnels, Ellie said. Javi and I explored them last summer. There's an access point behind the old water reclamation plant. Ethan raised an eyebrow at this revelation, but decided now wasn't the time for a lecture on dangerous explorations. Then that's our route. We leave in 30 minutes. Pack only essentials. As they prepared, Ethan noticed Ellie lingering near Valeth, watching with fascination as the alien adjusted her armor. Your exomembrane, Ellie said hesitantly. How does it know what you need? Valeth looked up, her expression softening. It's neurally linked to my biological systems. It senses my intentions, my physical state, and adapts accordingly. Like it's alive? In a sense, yes. It's a symbiotic technology, part mechanical, part organic. It learns and evolves with its wearer. She studied Ellie for a moment. Would you like to touch it? Ellie's eyes widened. Can I? Valeth extended her arm. Place your hand here. Hesitantly. Ellie reached out, placing her small palm against the iridescent surface of Valeth's armor. The material rippled gently beneath her touch, tiny patterns of light flowing toward her fingers. It's warm, Ellie whispered in wonder. It's responding to you, Valeth said, a note of surprise in her voice. That's unusual. The exomembrane typically only synchronizes with its designated user. What does that mean? Ethan asked, pausing in his preparations. Valeth's color-shifting eyes studied Ellie with new interest. It means your daughter has a remarkable neural pattern, a rare compatibility. She smiled slightly. Among my people, we would say she has the touch of the stars within her. Ellie beamed at this, but Ethan felt a twinge of unease. Everything was moving too quickly, connections forming that he didn't fully understand. Yet time was running short, and they had no choice but to push forward. We need to go, he said, shouldering his pack. The security patrols will change shifts soon. That's our best window. Night had fallen completely as they slipped from the dwelling, using the shadows between buildings for cover. The settlement buzzed with unusual activity, security drones patrolling in tight patterns, vehicles moving toward the mining sector. Ethan led them along a circuitous route that avoided the main thoroughfares, eventually reaching the abandoned water reclamation plant on the settlement's edge. The access hatch should be behind that processing tank, Ellie whispered, pointing to a massive cylindrical structure covered in faded hazard warnings. Ethan located the hatch and, with some effort, managed to pry it open. The tunnel beyond was dark and smelled of damp metal and minerals. I'll go first, he said, activating his light. Ellie, you follow. Valeth, bring up the rear and seal the hatch behind us. The tunnels were narrower than Ethan remembered from the old schematics, forcing them to move in single file through sections where mineral deposits had partially collapsed the walls. They progressed slowly, guided by Ellie's surprisingly detailed recollection of the layout. After nearly an hour of careful navigation, they reached a junction chamber that had once served as a pump station. Ethan checked the crude map he'd downloaded to his tablet. We're about 1 kilometer from the crash site, he reported. Valeth, can you access Heartflame from here? The Empress removed the crystalline device from a compartment in her armor. As she activated it, The crystal glowed with an internal light, projecting symbols in a language Ethan didn't recognize. "The connection is weak but present," she said after a moment. "Heartflame acknowledges my signal. The damage is extensive." Her expression tightened. "And there are foreign entities attempting to access its systems." "Can you lock them out?" Ethan asked. "Temporarily. But we must reach the vessel soon. The self-defense protocols are offline, and the quantum core is unstable." A sudden noise from the tunnel behind them made all three freeze. Ethan motioned for silence, drawing his sidearm, a standard-issue mining tool that doubled as a weapon in emergencies. The sound came again, a metallic scraping, followed by a soft whirring. Something was moving through the tunnels toward them. "Drone," Ellie mouthed silently. Ethan nodded. The security forces must have deployed search drones into the maintenance system. He gestured toward a side passage, and they quickly retreated into its shadows. Moments later, a hovering spherical device drifted into the junction chamber, its multiple sensor arrays scanning methodically. It paused, as if detecting something of interest, and began to move in their direction. Ethan raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Valeth placed a restraining hand on his arm. She made a subtle gesture, and a section of her armor detached, a small disc that floated into her palm. With practiced precision, she flicked the disc toward the drone. Upon contact, the disc expanded, engulfing the drone in a mesh of glowing filaments. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, then went silent, dropping to the ground with a dull thud. "Containment mesh," Valeth explained softly. "It disrupts electronic systems without destroying them. But they will know their drone is offline and send more." "Then we need to move faster," Ethan said. "The eastern tunnel should lead us directly beneath the crash site." They hurried through the labyrinthine passages, the atmosphere growing more oppressive as they neared the mining sector. Ethan could feel the subtle vibrations of heavy equipment operating above them. The security teams were bringing in serious hardware. Finally, they reached a vertical shaft with rusted rungs embedded in the wall. Ethan checked his position. "This should put us about 200 meters from Heartflame, but we'll be exposed once we exit." Valeth's armor rippled, adapting to what Ethan realized was a combat configuration. "I will go first and secure the area," she said, her voice taking on a harder edge, the voice of an Empress accustomed to command. "No," Ethan countered. "This is my territory. I know the terrain, the security protocols." He turned to Ellie. "Stay here until we signal it's clear. If we don't return in 20 minutes, use the tunnels to get back to the settlement. Find Tess. Tell her everything." Ellie's eyes filled with fear. "Dad, no!" "Promise me, Ellie." She swallowed hard, then nodded. "I promise." Ethan climbed the shaft first, pushing aside the access cover to peer cautiously at their surroundings. They had emerged in a depression between two massive ore processing structures, their bulk providing some cover from the searchlights sweeping the area. In the distance, he could see the crash site, now illuminated by powerful floodlights and surrounded by security personnel and equipment. Valeth joined him, her armor now a muted gray that blended with the shadows. "They've established a containment field," she observed. "Standard Shepherd protocol. They're preparing to transport Heartflame off-world." "Can you still access it?" She consulted the crystal interface. "Yes, but the connection is being actively blocked. I can override temporarily, but it will alert them to our presence." Ethan surveyed the scene, formulating a plan. "Those power generators for the floodlights, if they were to suddenly fail, would that give you enough of a distraction to reach the ship?" "Perhaps, but you would need to disable all three simultaneously, and they are well guarded." "Not simultaneously. Sequentially, with precise timing." Ethan pointed to the furthest generator. "That one first. When they divert forces to investigate, I take out the second. By the time they realize it's a pattern, You should have a clear path to the third generator and beyond to Heartflame. Valeth studied him. A sound strategy, but extremely dangerous for you. I'll manage. He checked his weapon. Be ready to move on my signal. Before Valeth could respond, a small voice came from behind them. I'm coming too. They turned to find Ellie, who had climbed the shaft despite their instructions. Ellie, I told you to wait, Ethan began. I know, but I had an idea. She held up a small device Ethan recognized as a remote mining detonator, standard equipment for controlled explosions in the ore extraction process. I found this in an equipment locker down there. We can use it to trigger the generators remotely. You won't have to get close to them. Ethan stared at his daughter, torn between pride at her resourcefulness and fear for her safety. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than you trying to reach each generator with guards everywhere, she countered. I can program the detonator from here. You just need to plant the charges. Valeth placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. She is right. This improves our chances significantly. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan nodded. Fine, but you stay here with Valeth, out of sight. Working quickly, he modified the small explosive charges from his pack, designed for emergency rock clearance but effective enough for their purposes. With Ellie's guidance, he programmed the remote detonator with a sequential firing pattern. Ready, he said finally. I'll plant the charges. When I get back, we trigger the sequence and make our move while they're distracted. Moving with the caution of someone long accustomed to frontier survival. Ethan slipped between shadows and equipment, approaching the first generator. The security personnel were focused on the ship, giving him just enough space to maneuver. One by one, he placed the charges, using the periodic sweep of searchlights as cover for his movements. He was returning to their position when disaster struck. A drone, different from the one they'd encountered in the tunnels, descended silently behind him. Ethan sensed its presence too late. A sharp pain lanced through his shoulder as the drone's stunned projectile hit its mark. He stumbled but managed to stay on his feet, drawing his weapon and firing in one fluid motion. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks, but the damage was done. Alarms blared across the site, and searchlights converged on his position. Intruder in Sector 5, came the amplified announcement. Security teams converge. Ethan ran, zigzagging between structures as energy weapons scorched the ground around him. He was nearly back to Valeth and Ellie's position when he saw the silver-eyed man from the server room, now flanked by two security officers, cutting off his escape route. Engineer Cole, the synthetic agent called, his voice carrying unnaturally over the chaos. Your interference is both futile and disappointing. Surrender now, and your daughter will be spared. Cold fury washed through Ethan at the implicit threat. Ellie, trigger the charges, he shouted, knowing she would hear him. The night erupted into chaos as the first generator exploded, then the second, then the third in rapid succession. The floodlights died, plunging the area into darkness broken only by emergency lighting and the fires from the destroyed equipment. In the confusion, Ethan charged forward, tackling one of the security officers. They grappled briefly before Ethan landed a solid blow, rendering the man unconscious. The second officer raised his weapon, but a blur of movement intercepted him, Valeth, moving with inhuman speed, her armor enhancing her strength as she neutralized the threat. The synthetic agent, however, remained unnervingly calm. Empress Valeth, he said, as if greeting an expected guest. Alpha Domina has been most concerned about your continued existence. Agent Morix, Valeth replied, her voice cold. Still a puppet for your artificial masters. I see. A puppet implies lack of choice. I serve willingly. Morix's perfect features arranged themselves into a smile. As does your former fleet admiral. She sends her regards. Something in his tone made Ethan tense. Before he could react, Morix drew a weapon unlike any Ethan had seen. A sleek device that emitted a pulse of energy that sent both him and Valeth crashing to the ground, their muscles seizing. Through the haze of pain, Ethan saw Morix approach Valeth, the weapon trained on her head. The exomembrane will be studied extensively. Domina is particularly interested in its neural interface capabilities. "Get away from her!" The shout came from behind them, and Ethan turned his head with effort to see Ellie, standing atop a fallen processing unit, the detonator still in her hand. Morix's silver gaze shifted to the child. "Ah, the offspring. Your neural patterns have been noted. Young one. Most unusual." "Ellie, run!" Ethan managed to call out, fighting against the weapon's effects. But instead of fleeing, Ellie's expression hardened with determination. She pressed another sequence on the detonator, and a fourth explosion rocked the night, a charge Ethan hadn't placed. The blast came from directly beneath Morix, the ground giving way as a section of the tunnel they'd used collapsed. The synthetic agent disappeared in a cloud of dust and debris. Ethan felt the paralyzing effect begin to fade and struggled to his feet. Valeth recovered more quickly, her armor apparently adapting to neutralize the weapon's effects. "Heart flame," she said urgently. "Now, while they're disorganized." The three of them ran toward the crash site, now only minimally guarded, as most security forces had responded to the explosions and the apparent attack on Morix. Using the darkness and confusion as cover, they reached the alien vessel. Up close, Heartflame was even more remarkable than Ethan had first thought. Its surface still seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But now, patterns similar to those on Valeth's armor were visible, pulsing with internal energy. Valeth pressed the crystal interface against the hull, and a section melted away, forming an entrance. "Quickly," she urged, ushering them inside. The interior was unlike any spacecraft Ethan had encountered. No hard angles or mechanical components. Everything flowed organically, with surfaces that seemed to shift and adapt as they moved through the vessel. Light emanated from the structure itself, bathing them in a soft blue glow. "The command center," Valeth said, leading them to what Ethan supposed was the bridge. Here, the organic design gave way to more recognizable control interfaces, though these too were far advanced beyond human technology. Valeth placed her hands on a central console that illuminated at her touch. Symbols and diagrams flowed across the surfaces, many flashing red, in what Ethan assumed were warning indicators. "The quantum drive is severely damaged," she reported. "Navigation, weapons, and cloaking systems are offline. Life support is functional but limited." "Can it be repaired?" Ethan asked. "Yes, but not here. I need components that your technology cannot provide." She manipulated the controls, bringing up a holographic display of the ship's schematics. "However, there is a possibility." She turned to Ethan. "You mentioned your wife was researching quantum navigation. Do you have access to her work?" The question caught him off guard. "Some of it. I saved her research materials after the accident. But what does that have to do with—" "The principles she was exploring," Valeth interrupted. "They align with aspects of our space-folding technology. If her theoretical models were advanced enough, we might be able to adapt them to temporarily restore Heartflame's spatial displacement capabilities." Hope and doubt warred within Ethan. Even if that's possible, her equipment, her notes, they're not here. They're hidden in an old volcanic formation 20 kilometers north. I moved them there after I began to suspect her death wasn't an accident. "Then that is where we must go," Valeth said decisively. "But first, we need to secure Heartflame from immediate threat." She turned back to the console, her fingers dancing across the controls. The ship hummed to life around them, the patterns of light intensifying. "I am initiating a limited self-defense protocol," she explained. "It will render the exterior temporarily impermeable and mask our life signs from detection. But it won't last long. The power reserves are critically low." "So we need to get to Sarah's lab and back before they run out," Ethan surmised. "Precisely," Valeth finished her adjustments and turned to them. The protocol is active. We have approximately 12 hours before Heartflame's reserves are depleted and the defenses fail. Ethan checked his tablet, pulling up topographical maps of the region. The volcanic formation is here, an old caldera that's been dormant for centuries. I've established a hidden access point on the southern face. My vehicle can get us there in about 2 hours, assuming we can get past the security perimeter. That won't be necessary, Valeth said. Heartflame's emergency transport system is still operational. It can relocate a small mass, such as the three of us, to any coordinates within a 50-kilometer radius. Ellie, who had been examining the ship's interior with fascination, looked up. Like teleportation. A crude approximation, but essentially correct. Valeth replied. It creates a localized fold in space-time, allowing matter to transition between 2 points without traversing the intervening distance. Then we'll use that, Ethan decided. But we'll need a way back. The lab doesn't have anything that could transport us over that distance. Valeth considered this. The transport system can be programmed with return coordinates, but it requires a quantum anchor at the destination point to establish the fold. She removed a small device from her armor. This will serve as the anchor. Once placed, it will maintain the connection for approximately 10 hours. Just enough time, Ethan said grimly. As they prepared for transport, the ship's sensors suddenly chimed an alert. Valeth quickly checked the displays. They're bringing in heavy cutting equipment, she reported. They're attempting to breach Heartflame's hull. Will the defenses hold? Against their current technology, yes. But if they escalate to more advanced methods? She left the implication hanging. Then let's not be here when they do, Ethan said. Ellie, stay close to me. They gathered in what Valeth identified as the transport chamber, a circular area where the organic patterns of the ship converged in spiraling designs. Ethan input the coordinates of Sarah's hidden lab, and Valeth placed the quantum anchor in the center of the chamber. The process may be disorienting for humans, she warned. Your perceptual systems aren't adapted to spatial displacement. Ethan pulled Ellie close. We'll manage. Just get us there. Valeth activated the sequence, and the patterns beneath their feet began to glow with increasing intensity. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against Ethan's skin as a high-pitched tone built to the threshold of pain. Then, abruptly, reality folded. Ethan's consciousness briefly fragmented, perceiving multiple locations simultaneously. The ship, the space between, and their destination all superimposed in a disorienting collage. Then, with a sensation like being snapped back from an enormous rubber band, they materialized in the dim confines of Sarah's secret laboratory. Ellie stumbled, disoriented, and Ethan steadied her as his own equilibrium returned. You okay, Starfinder? She nodded, though her face was pale. That was weird, like being everywhere and nowhere at once. An apt description, Valeth commented, seemingly unaffected by the transition. She surveyed their surroundings with interest. This is your mate's research facility? The laboratory was carved into the volcanic rock. A space perhaps 20 meters square filled with equipment that represented the cutting edge of human quantum research. Or at least, what had been cutting edge 5 years ago. Workstations lined the walls, their displays dark but ready. In the center stood Sarah's pride, a circular platform surrounded by emitter arrays, her prototype for what she had called positional realignment. Yes, Ethan said, moving to the main control console. Sarah established this lab off the books, used materials and equipment that wouldn't be missed, operated on an independent power system. He activated the main systems, and the lab hummed to life, displays illuminating with welcoming blue light. Impressive ingenuity, Valeth observed. She understood the need for secrecy. She knew something was watching her work, Ethan said quietly. She never said exactly what, but she felt monitored, especially after her third breakthrough. He gestured to a sealed container on one of the workbenches. That's the prototype for her quantum field stabilizer, the technology that should have revolutionized navigation, and that got her killed. As Ellie explored the lab with cautious curiosity, Valeth moved to examine the stabilizer. "May I?" Ethan nodded, and she opened the container, revealing a device about the size of a human palm, a complex arrangement of crystalline structures and metal that pulsed with subtle energy. "Remarkable," Valeth whispered, genuine awe in her voice. "She independently discovered principles that took my people millennia to develop." She looked up at Ethan. "Your mate was extraordinary." "She was," Ethan agreed, throat tight with emotion. "Now let's make sure she didn't die for nothing." They worked quickly, Ethan retrieving Sarah's research notes, while Valeth examined the stabilizer and related components. Ellie, proving her worth once again, managed to access encrypted files that Ethan had never been able to crack. "Dad, look at this," she called, her voice tight with excitement. Mom's final entry. She was working on something called neural interface augmentation, a way to control quantum fields through thought patterns. Valeth moved swiftly to Ellie's side, examining the display. This is extraordinarily advanced. She was developing a human-compatible version of the principles that underlie my exomembrane's neural link. "Could it help repair your ship?" Ethan asked. "More than repair it," Valeth replied, her color-shifting eyes alight with new possibility. "With these principles, we could potentially enhance Heartflame's space-folding capabilities, perhaps even achieve full interstellar transition." For the next several hours, they worked feverishly, combining Sarah's research with Valeth's knowledge of Saravari technology. The stabilizer was carefully modified, its crystalline matrix recalibrated to interface with Heartflame's quantum core. Additional components were harvested from Sarah's prototype platform, integrated into a new configuration that Valeth assured them would restore critical functions to her vessel. As they worked, Ethan felt a growing sense of connection to Sarah, as if, through this fusion of her work with alien technology, she was somehow present again. The thought that her research might now serve to fight against those who had taken her from him brought a grim satisfaction. They had nearly completed the modifications when the quantum anchor, placed at the center of the lab, began to pulse with increasing frequency. "Something's wrong," Valeth said, moving quickly to examine it. "The anchor is being traced. They've found a way to track the spatial displacement signature." As if confirming her words, the anchor projected a holographic display showing multiple craft converging on their location. "Shepard response units," Valeth identified. "At least 2 squadrons, heavily armed. They'll be here within minutes." Ethan checked the modified stabilizer, their key to repairing Heartflame. "Is this ready?" "It needs final calibration, but the core integration is complete," Valeth replied. "It should function. Then we need to go. Now." He gathered the stabilizer and essential components, securing them in a transport case. "Ellie, grab your mother's data crystal. All of her research needs to come with us." As they prepared to activate the return transport, the laboratory's perimeter alarms suddenly blared. External sensors showed aircraft landing on the Caldera rim. "They're already here," Ethan said grimly. "We're out of time." Valeth moved to the transport controls, her armor shifting to interface with the human technology. "The fold is destabilizing. The Shepards are disrupting the quantum field." "Can we still make it back to Heartflame?" Ethan asked, checking his weapon. "Yes, but the transition will be rough, and we'll emerge directly into their containment zone." She looked at him seriously. "We'll have to fight our way to the ship." Ethan nodded, then turned to Ellie. "Starfinder, listen carefully. When we get back, you stay behind me at all times. If something happens to me, you go with Valeth. She'll protect you." Ellie's young face was solemn but determined. "Nothing's going to happen to you, Dad. We're all getting out together." The perimeter alarms intensified as the lab's outer door registered impact. They were cutting through. "Now, Valeth!" Ethan shouted. The Empress activated the return sequence, and once again, reality folded around them. This time, the transition was violent, a wrenching sensation that felt like being torn apart and reassembled incorrectly. They materialized amidst chaos, floodlights, shouting, weapons fire. They had emerged directly in the containment zone established around Heartflame. Now, a battlefield as Shepherd forces attempted to breach the vessel's defenses. The ship itself was partially encased in a translucent field that shimmered where energy weapons struck it. Ethan oriented himself quickly, spotting a path toward Heartflame between two security positions. "This way," he called, pulling Ellie behind a piece of mining equipment for cover. Valeth's armor had fully deployed into combat configuration, segments extending to form shields that deflected incoming fire. She moved with fluid grace, neutralizing two guards with precise strikes before they could raise an alarm. They advanced by stages, using the debris and equipment as cover. Ethan's mining weapon proved effective against the human security forces. But he knew the synthetic agents would be another matter entirely. They had covered half the distance to Heartflame when a familiar figure stepped into their path, Agent Morix. His perfect features, now marred by damage from the earlier explosion. Portions of his synthetic nature were visible where the pseudo-skin had been torn away, revealing the metallic and crystalline structure beneath. "Persistent," he commented, his voice unchanged despite his damaged state. "Domina appreciates determination, even in lesser species." Before any of them could react, Morix raised his hand, and a pulse of energy erupted outward, knocking all three of them to the ground. The case containing the stabilizer flew from Ethan's grasp, skidding across the rocky terrain. Valeth recovered first, her armor absorbing much of the impact. She launched herself at Morix, the two engaging in combat at a speed almost too fast for human perception to track. Their movements were a blur of strikes, counters, and energy discharges as Valeth's advanced armor clashed with Morix's synthetic capabilities. Ethan scrambled to retrieve the stabilizer case, shielding Ellie as energy weapons fire rained around them. He had just secured the case when he felt a searing pain across his back, a glancing hit from one of the security force's weapons. "Dad!" Ellie cried out in alarm. "I'm okay," he gasped, though the wound burned like fire. "Keep moving toward the ship." They pressed forward, but their path was suddenly blocked by 4 more security personnel, weapons trained on them. Ethan pushed Ellie behind him, raising his own weapon despite knowing it was outnumbered. "Stop where you are," Cole ordered the lead officer. "Surrender the alien technology, and the child will not be harmed." The casual threat against his daughter ignited something primal in Ethan. With a roar of fury, he fired, catching the lead officer squarely in the chest. The man fell, but the others returned fire immediately. Ethan felt another searing impact, this time on his leg, and he stumbled. Just as the remaining officers closed in, a blur of movement intercepted them, Valeth, having momentarily disengaged from Morix. Her armor formed bladed extensions that she wielded with lethal precision, neutralizing the threat in seconds. "The ship," she urged, helping Ethan to his feet. "Quickly!" They had nearly reached Heartflame when Morix reappeared, his synthetic body damaged but still functioning. Behind him, a new wave of security forces was advancing, including what appeared to be more synthetic agents. "You cannot escape, Empress," Morix called. "Domina's reach extends beyond this primitive world. Surrender now, and perhaps these humans will be studied rather than eliminated." Valeth positioned herself between Morix and her companions, her armor reconfiguring once more. "Get to Heartflame," she said to Ethan. "I'll hold them off." "No," Ethan argued. "We go together or not at all." Valeth turned to him, her otherworldly eyes meeting his. "Trust me, Ethan Cole, get your daughter to safety." Before he could protest further, she placed her hand on the hull of Heartflame, and a section melted away, forming an entrance. "Go!" Ethan hesitated only a moment before pulling Ellie inside the vessel. The opening sealed behind them, leaving Valeth outside to face Morix and his forces alone. Inside, the ship hummed with the same soft blue light as before, but Ethan could sense its weakened state. Displays flickered, and the organic patterns flowed sluggishly. "We need to install the stabilizer," he said, moving toward what he remembered as the command center. "Then we can help Valeth." Ellie followed, her young face tight with worry. "Will it work without her? Can we operate the ship?" "We have to try," Ethan replied, opening the case and carefully removing the modified stabilizer. The command center responded to their presence, interfaces illuminating as they entered. Ethan examined the central console, searching for a configuration that matched the stabilizer's connection points. "There," Ellie said, pointing to a recess in the console that seemed to pulse in recognition of the device they carried. Carefully, Ethan placed the stabilizer into the recess. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of energy that made the entire ship shudder, the stabilizer integrated with Heartflame's systems. The organic patterns throughout the vessel suddenly flowed with renewed vigor, and the displays stabilized, showing streams of alien data. Outside, they could hear the sounds of battle, energy weapons, shouts, the distinctive discharge of Valeth's armor. Through the ship's sensors, they watched as the Empress fought with incredible skill against overwhelming odds. Her armor was absorbing damage, but each impact diminished its energy reserves. Morix pressed his advantage, driving her back toward the ship with relentless precision. "We need to help her," Ellie said desperately. Ethan examined the controls, trying to decipher their function. "If we can activate the ship's defenses, maybe extend the field to protect her." But the interfaces remained unresponsive to his touch, designed for Valeth's unique neural signature. Frustration mounting, he slammed his hand against the console. "Come on, we need to save her!" Beside him, Ellie had gone very still, her eyes fixed on the patterns flowing across the command center floor. "Dad," she said softly, I think I can feel it." "What do you mean?" "Like when I touched Valeth's armor. There's something calling to me." Her small hand reached out toward the console, hovering just above its surface. "It's like it wants to connect." Ethan remembered Valeth's surprise at Ellie's compatibility with the exomembrane. "Starfinder, are you saying you can communicate with the ship?" She nodded slowly. "I think so. It feels familiar somehow, like Mom's voice in a dream." Hope and fear warred within Ethan. "If you can access the systems, maybe you can extend the defensive field to Valeth." Ellie placed her hand on the console, and the response was immediate. The patterns beneath her palm intensified, flowing up to encompass her arm in a web of light. Her eyes widened in momentary alarm, then relaxed into an expression of wonder. "It's beautiful. Dad," she whispered. "I can see everything. The ship, its systems, its purpose." Her free hand moved to another section of the console, guided by an intuition Ethan couldn't fathom. "I can help her." Outside, Valeth was being driven to her knees, her armor failing under the concentrated assault from Morix and his forces, just as the synthetic agent moved in for what would have been a killing blow. The defensive field surrounding Heartflame suddenly expanded, engulfing Valeth in its protective embrace. Morix's attack was repelled, the energy dissipating harmlessly against the field. Valeth, momentarily protected, turned toward the ship in surprise. Seeing her opportunity, she retreated, passing through the field that parted for her, while maintaining its integrity against her pursuers. A section of the hull opened, and Valeth stumbled inside, her armor damaged and power reserves critically low. The opening sealed behind her, cutting off Morix's enraged shout. "Ellie," Valeth said in disbelief, seeing the girl interfaced with the ship's systems. "How are you doing this?" Ellie didn't respond immediately. Her attention focused on the flow of information through her connection. "They're trying to breach the field," she reported, her voice strangely distant. "Bringing in something called a phase disruptor." Valeth moved quickly to join her at the console, placing her own hand beside Ellie's. The ship recognized its rightful pilot, and new patterns of light formed between them, creating a shared interface. "Remarkable," Valeth breathed. "She's achieved a deep neural synchronization, something that should be impossible for a human." "Can you take control back?" Ethan asked, concerned for his daughter. "I don't need to," Valeth replied. "She's not controlling the ship. She's communicating with it. Heartflame recognizes her as compatible." Through the ship's sensors, they could see the Shepherd forces reorganizing, bringing forward a massive device that hummed with ominous energy. Morix stood at its control panel, his damaged synthetic face set in determination. "Phase disruptor charging," Ellie reported. "Impact in 45 seconds. "The stabilizer," Valeth said urgently. "Has it fully integrated?" Ethan checked the readings. "Yes, power levels are rising, but we're still not at full capacity." "We don't need full capacity for short-range space folding." Valeth's hands danced across the console, initiating sequences. "Ellie, can you access the navigation matrix?" The girl nodded, her eyes unfocused as she communicated directly with the ship. "Yes. Where are we going?" "The old volcanic caldera? Sarah's laboratory. It's defensible, and the mineral composition will help mask our signature temporarily." Ethan watched in amazement as his daughter worked in perfect synchronization with Valeth, preparing the damaged vessel for spatial displacement. The stabilizer pulsed with increasing energy, its modified components interfacing seamlessly with the alien technology. "Disruptor at 70% charge," Ellie reported. 30 seconds to impact. "Spatial coordinates locked," Valeth confirmed. "Preparing fold initiation." Outside, the phase disruptor reached full power, its emitter array oriented directly at Heartflame. Morix gave the command to fire, and a beam of concentrated energy lanced toward the ship. At that precise moment, Ellie and Valeth completed the fold sequence. Reality warped around Heartflame, the ship momentarily existing in two locations simultaneously, then vanishing from the containment zone entirely, just as the disruptor beam struck its previous position. The transition was smoother this time, the stabilizer compensating for the damage to the ship's systems. They materialized within the volcanic caldera, the ship settling gently onto the rocky floor near the entrance to Sarah's laboratory. "We did it," Ethan breathed, looking out at their new surroundings through the ship's sensors. "We're clear." Ellie slowly withdrew her hand from the console, the patterns of light receding from her arm. She swayed slightly, and Ethan caught her, concerned. "I'm okay," she assured him. "Just tired. It was like running a marathon with my brain." Valeth's armor retracted partially, revealing the extent of her injuries, several wounds that seeped indigo blood. Despite this, she regarded Ellie with newfound respect. "What you just did," she said softly, "is something I've never seen in any human. Your neural architecture is extraordinary." "Why could I connect with the ship?" Ellie asked. Valeth hesitated, exchanging a glance with Ethan. "I have a theory," she said finally. "Your mother's research, the neural interface she was developing, if she tested it on herself during pregnancy, it could have affected Ellie's neural development," Ethan finished, the pieces suddenly fitting together. "Sarah never mentioned testing it, but she was always so driven, so determined." "If that's the case," Valeth continued, "then your daughter possesses a unique gift, a human mind capable of interfacing directly with technologies far beyond your current civilization. Ellie looked between them, processing this revelation. Is that why the shepherds killed Mom? Because they knew what she'd done? Perhaps, Valeth said gently. Or perhaps they feared what her research would lead to. Humans capable of advancing far more rapidly than their controlled development plan allowed. Ethan moved to the central console, checking the ship's status. How long before they track us here? The caldera's mineral composition will obscure our signature temporarily, Valeth replied. But they know about this location now. They'll search methodically. I estimate we have a few hours at most. And the ship? Can it be fully repaired? Valeth examined the readouts. The stabilizer is functioning beyond expectations. Power levels are rising, and critical systems are coming back online. But we're still far from interstellar capability. So we're trapped, Ethan said grimly. Even if Heartflame can achieve orbit, we can't outrun them within this system. A moment of heavy silence fell over the command center as they confronted their dire situation. Then, unexpectedly, Ellie spoke up. What if we don't try to run, she suggested. What if we fight back instead? Both adults turned to her, surprised. The shepherds have been controlling humans, killing people like Mom who get too close to the truth, she continued, her young face serious. Shouldn't someone expose them? Make everyone see what they're doing? Valeth considered this. A direct confrontation with the shepherd factions would be difficult. They operate through proxies and controlled events precisely to maintain deniability. But you said you have loyal forces, Ethan pointed out. In the Aurealis Drift, if we could contact them. They would come, Valeth confirmed. But not quickly enough to save us from the immediate threat. Ethan paced the command center, thinking furiously. What about proof? Evidence of their interference? Sarah's research, combined with your testimony about their operations. If we could broadcast that throughout the colony network? It would be suppressed, Valeth said. The shepherds control the information channels, directly or indirectly. Then we need to go higher, Ellie said simply. Above the shepherds. Valeth's color-shifting eyes widened slightly. The Galactic Concord, she murmured. Yes, the governing body that even the shepherd factions must answer to. If we could present evidence directly to them. Is that possible? Ethan asked. Difficult, but not impossible. The Concord maintains observation posts at the boundaries of developing systems like yours. If we could reach one. She trailed off, calculating possibilities. Could Heartflame make it that far, with the stabilizer? Valeth examined the ship's diagnostics again. Perhaps. The quantum drive is functioning at 40% capacity and rising. With the stabilizer's enhancements, we might achieve limited interstellar capability, enough for a single jump to the nearest observation post. Hope flickered to life in Ethan's chest. Then, that's our play. We gather all the evidence, Sarah's research, your testimony, everything we've learned about the shepherd's interference, and make a run for the Concord. They will pursue us, Valeth warned. The moment we leave the Caldera's protection, they will detect us and bring everything they have to stop us. Then we need a diversion, Ethan said. Something to split their forces, confuse their sensors. They spent the next hour developing their plan. Using the remaining equipment in Sarah's laboratory, they constructed several devices that would mimic Heartflame's energy signature, decoys to be deployed across the region. Valeth modified the ship's cloaking system to integrate with Sarah's quantum field technology, creating a hybrid stealth capability that might briefly confuse the shepherd tracking systems. As they worked, Ethan noticed Valeth watching Ellie with increasing interest. The girl had recovered from her neural connection with the ship and was now helping to program the decoy devices. Her nimble mind quickly grasping the alien concepts Valeth explained. She truly is remarkable, Valeth said quietly to Ethan. In my culture, we have a term for individuals like her, Naiva Stel. It translates roughly to starseed, one born with the innate ability to bridge worlds. She's always been special, Ethan replied, pride momentarily overcoming his worry. Sarah used to say Ellie thought in patterns no one else could see. Valeth hesitated, then spoke more carefully. There is something else you should know, Ethan, about the shepherds, and why they might have particular interest in your daughter. Ethan tensed. What do you mean? The shepherds don't merely suppress technological advancement. They harvest it. Exceptional individuals are sometimes taken, their knowledge and abilities exploited, rather than simply eliminated. Her gaze remained on Ellie. If they discover her ability to interface with advanced systems, they will not kill her. They will take her, reshape her to serve their purposes. Cold fear gripped Ethan's heart. That's not going to happen. No, Valeth agreed, her voice hardening with resolve. It is not. Their preparations complete. They gathered in Heartflame's command center for a final review of the plan. The ship's systems were now operating at 60% capacity, the stabilizer continuing to enhance power regeneration. The decoys are programmed and ready for deployment, Ethan reported. They'll activate sequentially, creating the impression of a vessel jumping from location to location across the region. The cloaking system is integrated with the quantum field generator, Valeth added. It won't render us completely invisible to their sensors, but it should create enough uncertainty to delay pursuit. And I've loaded all of Mom's research into Heartflame's data core, Ellie said. Plus the records of everything that's happened since Valeth crashed. Ethan checked the external sensors. The caldera remained quiet, but thermal imaging showed multiple craft circling the wider area, the shepherds, methodically searching for them. They're getting closer, he observed. We need to move soon. Valeth nodded, moving to the navigation console. I've plotted our exit trajectory. We'll use the caldera's northeastern ridge as cover, then accelerate to orbital velocity. Once clear of the atmosphere, we'll initiate the jump to the Concord observation post. How long will the jump take? Ethan asked. With the current drive capacity, approximately 72 minutes of subjective time. Valeth replied, though only seconds will pass in normal space. And if they catch us before we can complete the jump? Valeth's expression was grim. Then we fight. Heartflame's defensive systems are operational, if limited. Ethan moved to the weapon station, familiarizing himself with the alien interface. I'll handle defense. Valeth, you pilot. Ellie. He hesitated, reluctant to involve his daughter further. I'll monitor the stabilizer, Ellie said firmly. I can feel when it needs adjustment, and I can help interface with the ship if necessary. Ethan wanted to protest, to keep her safe from danger, but the truth was, they needed her unique abilities. He nodded reluctantly. Stay alert. If I tell you to secure yourself in the shelter compartment, you do it immediately. No arguments. Understood, she said solemnly. With their roles established, they began the launch sequence. Heartflame hummed with increasing power as systems engaged. The organic hull vibrated subtly, as if the vessel were a living thing awakening from slumber. Deploying first decoy, Ethan announced, activating the remote device. On their sensors, they watched as the small probe launched from the caldera, emitting an energy signature that mimicked Heartflame's quantum core. Almost immediately, two of the searching craft broke off to investigate. It's working, Ellie said, watching the tactical display. They're taking the bait. Deploying second and third decoys, Ethan continued, launching the devices at carefully calculated intervals. More of the search craft diverted, spreading the shepherd forces thin across the region. Now, Valeth commanded, her hands dancing across the navigation controls. Engaging main drive. Heartflame rose smoothly from the caldera floor, its advanced propulsion system nearly silent. They skimmed along the northeastern ridge as planned, using the natural formation to shield them from direct observation. Cloaking field active, Valeth reported. Accelerating to exit vector. The ship surged forward, climbing rapidly through Veritas's turbulent atmosphere. On the tactical display, they could see confusion among the Shepherd forces as conflicting sensor readings appeared across the region. "They haven't locked onto us yet," Ethan observed. "The decoys are working." But their advantage was short-lived. As they approached the upper atmosphere, a new contact appeared on their sensors. A vessel, much larger than the search craft, descending from orbit directly into their path. "Shepherd command ship," Valeth identified, her voice tight. "They anticipated our strategy." The massive vessel loomed ahead, at least 10 times the size of Heartflame. Its design was sleek and predatory, bristling with weapon systems that made Ethan's heart sink. "Can we go around it?" he asked. Valeth shook her head. "Not without losing critical acceleration, and it's already deploying interceptors." On the tactical display, smaller craft launched from the command ship, moving to encircle their position. Ethan activated Heartflame's defensive systems, targeting solutions appearing across his interface. "We fight through," he said grimly. "Hit them hard, break their formation, then make the jump." Valeth nodded, adjusting their trajectory for a direct approach. "Ellie, channel additional power to forward shields. We're going to take fire." The girl complied, her hands moving with surprising confidence across the alien controls. The stabilizer pulsed with increased energy as she redirected its output. "Interceptors in range in 15 seconds, Ethan reported. "Weapon systems locked." "Wait for my mark," Valeth instructed. "We'll only get one pass." The interceptors closed rapidly, their weapons charging. Heartflame hurtled toward them, shields at maximum power, course unwavering. "Now," Valeth shouted. Ethan fired, Heartflame's energy weapons lancing out in a devastating pattern that caught the first wave of interceptors unprepared. 2 exploded immediately, while a third spun away, damaged. The remaining craft returned fire, energy beams impacting Heartflame's shields with concussive force. The ship shuddered violently. Warning indicators flashed across multiple consoles as the shields absorbed the assault. "Shield integrity at 60%, Ellie called out. "Stabilizer compensating, but we're losing power faster than it can regenerate." Valeth executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible in any human craft. Heartflame responding with fluid grace despite its damaged state. They slipped between the remaining interceptors, Ethan firing continuously to keep the enemy craft at bay. But the command ship loomed ever larger, its massive weapons arrays tracking their approach. As they closed within striking distance, a familiar voice suddenly echoed through Heartflame's communication system. "Empress Valeth, Ethan, and Ellie Cole. This is Commander Sin of the Shepherd Oversight Division. Your resistance is both futile and unnecessary. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded." The voice sent a jolt of recognition through Ethan, familiar yet distorted, like a melody played in the wrong key. Beside him, Valeth's expression tightened with what might have been regret. "Who is that?" Ethan demanded. "How do they know our names?" Before Valeth could respond, the tactical display lit up with multiple targeting solutions as the command ship brought its main weapons to bear. "Brace for impact!" she shouted. The first barrage struck Heartflame with devastating force, overwhelming the weakened shields and penetrating to the hull itself. The ship lurched violently, systems fluctuating as damage control protocols engaged. A section of the command center erupted in a shower of energy discharges, throwing Ethan to the floor. "Dad!" Ellie cried out in alarm. He struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain from fresh burns along his arm. "I'm okay. Stay at your station." Valeth fought to stabilize their course, her armor extending to interface directly with the ship's systems. "Quantum drive at 85% charge. We need 90 for successful jump initiation." "We won't last that long under this fire," Ethan said, returning to the weapons console. "We need to break away. Buy more time." Another impact rocked the ship. This time, a breach formed in the outer hull. Automatic containment fields barely preventing atmospheric loss. Warning indicators multiplied across all stations. Hull integrity compromised, Valeth reported. Secondary systems failing. Drive charge holding at 87%. The command ship now filled their forward view, its massive form blocking any escape route. Additional interceptors moved to surround them, weapons ready. They were trapped. "Commander Sin to Heartflame," came the voice again. "This is your final warning. Surrender now, or we will be forced to employ lethal measures." Ethan exchanged a desperate look with Valeth. "Options." The Empress hesitated, her otherworldly eyes clouded with what appeared to be guilt. "There is one possibility," she said finally, "but it comes at great cost." "Whatever it takes," Ethan said firmly. "We're not surrendering." Valeth nodded, then turned to Ellie. "Young one, I need your help. Your connection with Heartflame. It can be used to channel the stabilizer's output directly into the quantum drive. It might provide the surge needed to initiate the jump." "But," Ethan prompted, sensing the unspoken warning. "But it would drain the stabilizer completely," Valeth admitted. "And the neural load on Ellie would be significant." "You mean dangerous," Ethan said, moving protectively toward his daughter. "Yes," Valeth acknowledged. "I would not suggest it if we had any alternative." Ellie looked between them, her young face set with determination beyond her years. "I can do it," she said firmly. "I'm not afraid." "Ellie, no," Ethan began. "Dad," she met his gaze steadily. "Mom died trying to protect this knowledge, trying to help humanity advance. I can do this. I need to do this." Another impact shook the ship, more systems failing. On the tactical display, the command ship was positioning for a final, devastating strike. "We're out of time," Valeth warned. "Decide now." Ethan looked at his daughter, so much like her mother, so brave and brilliant, and felt his heart breaking at the choice before him. To risk her life or to surrender, condemning her to whatever fate the shepherds had planned. "Do it," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "But I'm staying with her. Whatever happens, we face it together." Valeth nodded. "Position yourselves at the central console. I will reroute all available power to support the transfer." As they moved into position, the ship's communication system activated again. This time, the visual channel opened as well, revealing the face of Commander Sin on the main display. Ethan froze, the breath leaving his body as if he'd been struck. "Sarah?" The woman on the screen bore his wife's face, but altered, her warm eyes now cold and calculating, her features set in unfamiliar, harsh lines. Her hair was pulled back severely, and a neural interface device curved around her left temple. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice the distorted echo he'd recognized earlier. "This isn't how I wanted our reunion to proceed." "You're alive," he whispered, disbelieving. "How?" "The individual you knew as Sarah Cole was recovered after an authorized termination event." Commander Sin replied mechanically. Her neural architecture and exceptional cognitive abilities were deemed too valuable to waste. She was repurposed in service to the greater stability of developing civilizations. "Repurposed," Ethan repeated, horror and rage building within him. "You mean brainwashed, turned into a puppet?" A flicker of something, pain, recognition, resistance, crossed Sarah's face before her expression smoothed again. "Surrender the Empress, the child, and the vessel. You will not be harmed." "Mom?" Ellie's voice was small, confused. "Is that really you?" Again, that flicker in Sarah's eyes. "Ellie," she said, her voice momentarily softer, more familiar. "You've grown so much." "Enough!" A new figure appeared beside Sarah on the screen, Agent Morix, his synthetic features partially repaired. "Commander Sin, execute your orders or be replaced." Sarah's expression hardened again. "Final warning. Power down in 10 seconds or be destroyed. Ethan turned away from the screen, meeting Valeth's gaze. The Empress nodded grimly, understanding without words. He moved to Ellie, placing his hands on her shoulders. Starfinder, he said softly. We're getting out of here. All of us. And then we're going to find a way to bring your mother back. I promise. Ellie nodded, tears in her eyes but determination in her face. I'm ready. They positioned themselves at the central console, Ellie placing her hands on the interface, as she had before. This time, Ethan kept his hands on her shoulders, providing what support he could. Valeth worked rapidly, rerouting systems and establishing the connection between the stabilizer and the quantum drive. Ready on your mark, she said to Ellie. On the screen, Sarah was counting down. 5, 4. Now, Ellie, Valeth commanded. The girl closed her eyes, establishing the neural connection with Heartflame. Immediately, patterns of light flowed up her arms, more intense than before, spreading across her body in a web of luminous energy. She gasped, her back arching as the connection deepened. Ethan held her steady, feeling the energy pulsing through her small form. I'm here, Starfinder. I'm right here with you. The stabilizer began to pulse with blinding intensity, its energy flowing visibly through the ship's systems and into the quantum drive. Power readings spiked beyond any previous levels, alarms blaring across all stations. 3, 2. Sarah continued on the screen. Quantum drive at 92% and rising, Valeth reported. Jump coordinates locked. 1. Sarah's countdown was cut short as she suddenly clutched her head, a look of genuine pain crossing her features. Ethan, she gasped, her voice suddenly her own again. The control implant. It's in my left temple. Remember that. Left temple. Sarah! Ethan called out, his heart racing. But her moment of clarity passed as quickly as it had come. Morix stepped forward, physically restraining her, as she struggled briefly. Commence fire, he ordered. The command ship's weapons arrays lit up, preparing to deliver a final, overwhelming barrage. At that same moment, the quantum drive reached full charge, energy cascading through Heartflame systems. Jump initiating, Valeth announced. Reality folded around them once more. But this time, the sensation was infinitely more intense. A wrenching, twisting feeling, as space-time itself bent to accommodate their transition. The command ship, the interceptors, Veritas itself, all vanished as Heartflame leapt into the quantum fold. For what seemed like both an eternity and an instant, they existed in a state beyond normal space-time. Ellie remained the focal point, her connection with the ship, the conduit through which the impossible transition was achieved. The patterns of light encompassing her body pulsed in perfect synchronization with the quantum drive. Her consciousness expanded beyond normal human perception. Then, with a final surge of energy that depleted the stabilizer completely, they emerged into normal space. A vast starfield spread before them, dominated by a massive structure that seemed to be composed of interlocking geometric shapes, glowing with internal light. The Concord observation post. As the ship stabilized in its new position, the energy patterns surrounding Ellie gradually receded. She slumped in Ethan's arms, exhausted but conscious. Did we make it? She whispered. Yes, Starfinder, he assured her, holding her close. We made it. You did it. Valeth checked the ship's systems, confirming their position. We've arrived at the Concord observation post. Remarkably, exactly on target despite the unstable jump conditions. She looked at Ellie with newfound respect. Your daughter's neural guidance was perfect. Will they help us? Ethan asked, gently lifting Ellie into a more comfortable position. The Concord exists to maintain balance among all civilizations, including oversight of the Shepherd factions. Valeth explained. With the evidence we've brought, Sarah's research, my testimony, And now the revelation of Commander Sin's true identity. They will be compelled to investigate. And Sarah, can they help her? Valeth's expression softened with compassion. If anyone can undo what the shepherds have done to her, it is the Concord's medical technologists. Their neural restoration techniques are far beyond even my people's capabilities. As they approached the observation post, Heartflame's communication system activated, this time showing a being unlike any Ethan had encountered. Humanoid, but clearly not human, with features that seemed to shift subtly, as if not fully committed to a single form. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Concord monitoring space. The being stated in perfect, unaccented English. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Valeth stepped forward. I am Empress Valeth Saravari, rightful sovereign of the Seventh Accord, seeking asylum and intervention against Shepherd faction violations of development protocols in the Sol system. The being's shifting features registered something like surprise. Empress Valeth, your status was reported as terminated following the Alpha Domina usurpation. Reports of my demise were premature, Valeth replied. I bring with me human witnesses and evidence of Shepherd interference beyond their mandate, including forced consciousness, repurposing of advanced individuals. The being's attention shifted to Ethan and Ellie. Humans? From the Sol system? Its expression became grave. This is unprecedented. The Shepherds have explicit instructions against direct contact with Sol species for at least another century. Yet, here we are, Ethan said, stepping forward with Ellie at his side. With proof of their interference in our development, their murder of scientists who came too close to advanced discoveries, and their... He swallowed hard. Their repurposing of my wife. The being studied them for a long moment, then nodded. You will be brought aboard. A full Concord inquiry will be convened. If your evidence supports your claims, the ramifications for the Shepherd factions will be significant. As the observation post extended a docking mechanism toward Heartflame, Ethan felt the first genuine hope he'd experienced in years. They had escaped. They had reached sanctuary. And now they had a chance, not just to expose the truth, but perhaps to rescue Sarah from whatever the Shepherds had done to her. Ellie looked up at him, tired but triumphant. We did it, Dad. We really did it. Yes, Starfinder, he said, holding her close. And we're just getting started. Valeth joined them, her regal bearing now tempered with something like affection. The Concord will need your testimonies, she said. Both of you. And Ellie's unique abilities will be of great interest to them. What happens after that? Ethan asked. We can't go back to Veritas, not now. No, Valeth agreed. But perhaps that is for the best. The universe is far larger and more wondrous than your people have been permitted to know. She looked at Ellie with genuine warmth. And there are places where young ones with star-touched minds can learn to develop their gifts safely. And my mom, Ellie asked softly. Can we really save her? Valeth knelt to meet the girl's eyes. The path will not be easy. The Shepherds will not surrender Commander Sin willingly, especially now that we know her true identity. But yes, with the Concord's backing, with your father's determination, and with your remarkable gifts, I believe we can. As Heartflame docked with the observation post, Ethan gazed out at the vast starfield beyond. 5 days ago, his world had been confined to a struggling colony on a harsh frontier planet. Now he stood at the threshold of a universe far more complex, dangerous, and wonderful than he had ever imagined. His wife was alive, though changed and distant. His daughter possessed abilities that transcended normal human potential. And beside them stood an alien empress who had lost her throne, but found allies in the most unlikely corner of the galaxy. What are you thinking, Dad? Ellie asked, sensing his introspection. Ethan smiled down at her. The star-touched child who had made the impossible possible. I'm thinking your mother would be incredibly proud of you right now, and that wherever this journey takes us next, we face it together." Valeth approached as the docking sequence completed. "The conquered representatives await us. Are you ready?" Ethan took Ellie's hand in his own, feeling the strength in her small fingers, the hands that had guided them across the stars. "We're ready." Together, the three of them moved toward the airlock, stepping out of the damaged but resilient Heartflame and into a new chapter of human history, one where the stars were no longer distant lights, but beacons of possibility, and where a single family's struggle for truth had broken the chains of an entire civilization's controlled development. Behind them, in the vast darkness of space, the quantum wake of their passage still rippled, marking a path that others would someday follow. And somewhere, in a Shepherd command ship now scrambling to respond to the unprecedented breach of protocol, a woman named Sarah Cole fought against her programming, a single thought giving her strength. Her family was alive, free, and coming back for her. It was enough, for now, to keep hope burning like a heart flame in the darkness.